What happens when you try to build a new PC and run into multiple simultaneous product failures? A little intro. I'm the kind of person where, if what I have works, then it's good enough for me. I'm frugal and I don't feel the need to upgrade equipment until I have to. So I've been perfectly content with my 13-year-old Hackintosh computer dual booting into Windows and Mac. That is, until recently. See, I made some video essays on Yakuza 0, 1, and 2. Steam was having a sale on the other Yakuza games and I figured it was as good a time as any to try them out and have some fun streaming them. Oh. For some reason, the other Yakuza games require a CPU that supports AVX, even though Yakuza 0, 1, and 2 don't. So, with no workaround, it was finally time to upgrade. After all, I'm running 10.12 Sierra when Mac OS is already at 12.0 Monterey. That's a full 5 OSs behind. In order to get started, I enlisted the help of my dad. See, I'm an art graduate, which means I spent a lot of money to go to art school and then not find an art job and sell insurance instead. It also means I don't know dick about building computers. My dad, on the other hand, is a 40-year veteran in software engineering. He was the person who built my computer back in 2009. This time, we'd build it together. It was going to be a father and son bonding experience, home improvement hot rod style. I figured the whole process wouldn't take too long. A day to research and order the parts, a few days waiting for shipping, and then a day or two to build it. So maybe a week at most. I was itchy to resume streaming, and really, how long could it take?
3 weeks later.
Oh no. We started this project on January 2nd and didn't finish until January 23rd. So what took so long? Well, after looking up information online regarding Intel versus AMD and what we should get from places like Tom's Hardware and PC Part Picker, here's what we settled on. A Cougar mid-tower computer case, $45. A Pi-Star 850 power supply, $40. A Scythe CPU fan, also $40. 32 gigabytes of Corsair LPX memory, $120. An MSI MPG X570 Gaming Plus motherboard, $160, and an AMD Ryzen 7 5800X CPU, $370. That just left the graphics card. Now, lately, due to a combination of crypto mining demand and supply chain issues, graphics card prices are through the roof, meaning it would have cost us around $1,700. Thankfully, we already owned a spare NVIDIA 1060, making the total cost only $775. Due to some price differences, we split the order between Amazon and Newegg, and they were delivered on January 5th and 6th respectively. We spent the day fitting parts, tightening screws, and most importantly, we made sure to only use the organelle cables in the packaging. Finally, the moment of truth arrived, and it didn't work. This is where my contributions largely ceased as my art skills weren't in demand. My dad continued to work tirelessly on the project, and thankfully, he was kind enough to write down some notes for me, which are what I'm mostly going off for the remainder of this video. Supposedly, the AMD motherboard needed a BIOS update to use the CPU. The packaging declares it's AMD Ryzen 5000 desktop ready. Apparently, the sticker should be translated as, it might support your 5000 series processor, who knows? Normally, the way you perform a BIOS update is straightforward. Boot up with an existing processor and perform the update with a UI designed for this purpose. However, since this was a brand new machine, we had no prior working processor to boot with, and an LED on the motherboard confirmed the CPU was unrecognized. This should be no problem. You can also update the BIOS by downloading a file from MSI's website onto a USB drive and pressing the BIOS update button on the motherboard. Well, that didn't work either. All the online video tutorials show a USB drive that flashes repeatedly and then stops after about 5 minutes. So my dad plugs in a USB, it flashes 3 times and stops after 10 seconds. So he gets another USB and the same thing happens. Third time's the charm? Nope, it also fails. Obviously, there's no way this many USBs are bad, so the motherboard must be defective. He orders a new one from Newegg and pays for next day delivery. It's Friday, January 7th. Saturday comes and goes, as does Sunday. On Monday, he calls Newegg and they tell him there was a train delay coming from their warehouse in Georgia. They refund the expedited delivery fee, but they can't get it to us for some time. So my dad orders another motherboard from them to be delivered sooner by plane. The new one arrives on Friday, January 14th. He installs it and attempts the BIOS update. The same error happens. 3 flashes and all the lights turn off. He tries all manner of combinations of USB drives, formatting, having the non-motherboard PC components hooked up or not, and other eldritch incantations suggested on message boards. Nothing. A thought occurs to him. Maybe the other motherboard wasn't defective after all, since this behavior is really odd. He assembles the organelle motherboard, but the same thing happens. Lost for what to do next, on a lark, he plugs in a 4th USB, expecting the same results. But somehow, this one works. Hijo de puta, he swears in Spanish. Now it starts flashing and doesn't stop until 5 minutes elapse. Okay, so it worked. The organelle motherboard was good. He tries the new one as well, but it's a no-go there, meaning the new one is defective. The old one just needed a lucky USB to slip past MSI's less than robust BIOS update. Unfortunately, the computer still can't boot with the 5800X CPU, and the red CPU unrecognized light is still on. If we had a 3000 series processor, we could probably boot and confirm the BIOS version. No friend has one, and neither do any local repair shops. He bites the bullet and buys a 3600. It arrives, and on January 16th, sure enough, it boots up just fine. He does the BIOS update using the UI and confirms everything's good. He reinstalls the 5800X and it doesn't boot. The CPU was also faulty, so it's getting returned. One small problem: it's been 2 weeks since it arrived, and by this point we'd already thrown out the packaging, and Newegg requires the packaging for returns, so long story short, we get to eat $370 for a defective CPU. Lesson learned. But at least the computer finally works. All we have to do is get everything set up. Now, with both a Mac and Windows, we spend some time hooking up cables to a KVM switch so I can flip back and forth between computers as needed. Thankfully, this process was simple and worked as advertised. All that's left is internet access. Back in 2003, when our house was originally built, landlines were still a thing. Long story short, the wall outlet in my room has one phone line and one data line. Since I now had 2 independent computers, I need the phone line to be repurposed into a data line so that both computers could use the internet simultaneously. The voice lines and data lines converge at a distribution hub in our garage. My dad has done this before. He disconnects the voice line from the voice network panel and connects it to a port in the data network. And it doesn't work. My dad spends a day checking wires while I verify they're correct using a tone generator. We repeat the verification for 8 different wires and they all check out. Eventually, he pulls the wire out of my wall outlet and we discover the insulation is torn open and there's a break. He cuts the cables and reattaches the network plug. On January 23rd, everything finally works. Our quest complete, we perform a tribal victory dance and my dad goes to celebrate our triumph with an adult beverage. The moral of the story? With enough determination and persistence, eventually you too can play Yakuza 3.